Hello and welcome back. It is a review of the Carlton Gold Coast game, which we are doing today. It feels good to be talking about us being on the winners list as opposed to getting our asses kicked in a pretty embarrassing fashion. We won this game on the back of a 9-goal second quarter, and it was one of the best viewing spectacles I have seen in a very long time. It was a domination that I don't really think I've seen from even the most dominant of sides in recent years. Like 9 goals, 3 behinds. Geelong beat Hawthorn in a quarter by about 65 points, but no other team has come close. And we were able to replicate that yesterday. And wow, what a quarter of football. And the first quarter wasn't really giving anyone any hint that we were going to be doing something like that in the second quarter. We kicked 1 goal. It looked like we were destined for another 6-goal performance, and it would have been another case of sacking the coach, whether or not it's the players or the coach. Why are we doing this? Where do we take it from here? This is a dysfunctional football club. All those discussions have been delayed for a couple of weeks because we're riding a wave of optimism for what the season has left or in store, because obviously we've got the bye next week, and unfortunately for every other team in the comp or every fan base, Carlton cannot lose to the bye. Maybe West Coast can, but we can't. This was a game that was reminiscent of 2022, kicking a bag of goals in 1 quarter, just tearing the game wide open, and that's exactly what we did. It was a burst of goals, which, this is the potential that this team can live up to in terms of not playing like they did in the second quarter for 4 quarters, but being able to do that in spurts, and that alone is enough for you to win a game of football. Look, the first quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, we weren't too eye-catching in what we did, but I will say that throughout the entire game, irrespective of how many goals we kicked, irrespective of how potent we were on the scoring front, our pressure was up, our endeavour was up. We had 71 tackles or something along those lines yesterday, which was obviously a vast improvement on last week, and that was needed, because if we backed up a 33 tackle performance with something similar, we would have been run off the park. And it would have been another questioning of coaching staff, of players, of their motives, all this stuff. But we're not going to talk about what could have happened. We're going to talk about what did happen. And in this game, tackling was in numbers. Every single corner the Suns turned, there was a Carlton player there. In that second quarter burst, they barely had the football. And when they did, they were met with a very good tackle that involved pinning one arm. That was a very common trait of our tackles, something that we have not been exposed to as a fan base. A good tackling football side that sticks tackles and makes it very difficult for the opposition to actually dispose of the ball, which, we can't ask for much more than that. 80% of entries were goals, or scores, should I say, in that second quarter. And that is the byproduct of lowering your eyes and the 666 rule. The Suns couldn't drop a man back because the 666, even though they were conceding 4, 5, 6 goals in a very short space of time, and there was no way to stop the bleeding once we started doing what we did. I think the best thing about that second quarter was acting off instinct. I think way too much in this losing streak we've thought things out. And that sometimes can do more harm than good. We've been too overcomplicated with how we play, very precise. That is just, we're trying to cut ourselves into a shape that simply doesn't fit the mold. And when we played without fear, in the face of a potential risk, we looked very, very good. And that team element was really enhanced. That second quarter was so important because our confidence elevated. We thought we could do whatever we wanted, and you could see in the demeanor, the way these players carried themselves, you could see that. You could see that they were running off halfback with no fear of whether their opponent could get the ball over the top if we turned it over, because we had confidence in our players to not turn the ball over. We were lowering our eyes going inside forward 50. The confidence of players, it's a strange thing what it can do when it's sky high and when it's down in the dumps. And yesterday you saw what happens when these players are riding a good wave of confidence, a positive wave of confidence. And there was a lot of blocking as well yesterday. I noticed quite a few Shepherds. Smart stuff to free up our forwards. The leading patterns looked a little bit more cohesive. This is what we've been waiting for, because all year it's been all talk, no actions. And finally, something happened yesterday. I don't know if that's a long-term thing. I don't know if we've turned a corner. I'm not going to say it right now. People are getting excited, and I think way too excited about this win. Saying,
this is what you should have done for weeks.
Well, we were playing better opponents in previous weeks that were not permitting us to do what we did today. The Suns were, in essence, traffic cones. It really is summed up when you look at that Matt Owies goal off the ground, where they had two defenders in the goal square that could have rushed it over, and they did not know what they were doing. I'm pretty convinced in that moment they did not know they were AFL footballers. They channeled their inner local footy reserves mentality. They did not know what rushing the football means. And I feel like that's a bit too common in the AFL nowadays, but that was just next level bad, and that really summed up Gold Coast's day. Look, they say it's a midfielder's game. I don't know who said that, but I'm going to say it right now. That was fully on show yesterday. You know, you talk about the goal scoring impact of our forwards or our midfielders. 2 goals to Cripps, 2 goals to Chera, or 3 goals to Cripps. You got goals from Fogarty, who was playing a bit of midfield time. You had Matt Kennedy kicking a goal. Sam Walsh had about 3 shots on goal. Some of them he sprayed. You know, everyone was getting involved. You talk about those players with their two-way running, like getting back and helping defensively, also, you know, helping fuel our run off half-back and acknowledging those guys running past. They were setting the precedent with their tackling pressure and intensity, which really could be felt throughout the whole team, but it really speaks volumes about what leadership does. You need those guys in the guts to really set the tone, and they did. And in that second quarter burst, they thrust us into the forward line with haste, and very smartly as well. I think Sam Doherty was one who really embodied these traits that the midfielders have been sorely lacking, but demonstrated yesterday. I mean, Sam Doherty was everywhere, you know, in the guts. It was very, very ferocious when he had the tackling opportunity on offer. You know, he was running back to support his teammates and get us that nice little cheap kick out in the midst of all this pressure. Obviously, he was the main one. David Cunningham, it was good to see him back in Blues colours and uninjured after a game. You know, he was very clean with his pickups. It was 11 possessions I think he had, but 11 very high impact possessions with the pickup. Some of his agility was on show as well, which was good to see. He's got that in the locker, which was on display yesterday. And with time, I think he'll get to a very good position in terms of how he'll be able to contribute to this football side in a very, very profound way. Jack Martin, he's been one who's been well off it for God knows how long, but he was very good in terms of the way he got involved in the forward line. Sometimes we needed that little bit of composure. It's so overused, that word in media circles or commentary circles, but the composure was there yesterday. Brody Kemp was solid in the back line early. You know, you had Nick Newman, who headlined the inclusions, but he was very important in terms of being that hard nut that we needed in the back line, and also allowed other players to be freed up, like Chincotta, like Boyd, like Sard, who didn't really have as much weight on, or should I say weren't weighed down by defensive responsibilities when they've obviously got some good attacking weapons at their disposal, whether that is by their ball use or by their pace. They were able to maximize that more so because that defensive responsibility had been removed from them. And look, there is a little Paddy Dow narrative going on right now about, yeah, he got 8 touches in 25 minutes. He deserves to get into the 22 on the back of that. I'm not willing to jump on that bandwagon because he has not displayed that when the game matters early in the game. Obviously, he can only do that if he's in the best 22, but I wouldn't risk it. I wouldn't shake things up in 2 weeks' time. I'd just run with the same 22, unless, of course, there is absolutely an inclusion that needs to be made. But look, I'm happy for Paddy Dow to be a sub. 8 touches in 25 minutes, that's some high-value minutes. So if he can provide that in short bursts, I actually think that's where we could see some of the best footy from Paddy Dow, even though it's not a lot of footy to be subjected to in the AFL system. So the 23rd man is a bit of a cruel rule in some ways, especially for the people who are the 23rd man. But look, I think Paddy Dow, this is what he needs. He needs a little bit of a role that can ease him back into the AFL system, where he can slowly work on his craft as he gets exposed to the AFL system a little bit more, gets that continuity in short patches, and then you can expose him to the full product once he has worked on his craft enough in a shorter space of time. And the good thing is, playing as a 23rd man sometimes sees you exposed to the game when the game is gone. So he can, develop in a much more lower pressure environment, as opposed to throwing him into the deep end, making potentially costly mistakes when the game is up for grabs, and then he doesn't see the end of all the hatred that he gets because he was kicking at 15% efficiency or some shit. As I said at the start, I'm keeping my emotions in check. A very good win indeed, but only part of the process. We've got a big month ahead. The bye week is going to be important to fix things up and work on the things that did work and try to make those things stick with regards to our game plan. And then it's going to be applying it against Hawthorn, who have not been a pushover kind of side all year round, basically, except for when they were tanking, according to Cornsey. Then it'll be trying to do that away from home against Freo, which is always a tough trip. And then it's going to be returning here to play the number 1 ranked side in the league as it currently stands. So it's going to be a series of tests which will really tell the full story as to if we've developed at all, and if so, how far we've developed. But that'll do it. My question to you this week is, who was your number 1 ranked player? Plenty of players putting their hands up with some very good performances. We'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in, and bye for now.